I was standing on a manicured lawn in a suburb I'd never visited, watching my wife, the woman I'd kissed goodbye in Chicago 6 hours earlier, laugh as she leaned into another man's chest. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. She was wearing a sundress I'd never seen, and she was answering to a name that wasn't hers. My heart wasn't just breaking, it was vibrating with a frequency of pure, unadulterated shock. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why that afternoon in Indianapolis shattered my reality into a million jagged pieces, I have to take you back to the lie that started it all. Elena and I had what everyone called a storybook marriage. We'd been married for 5 years, lived in a beautiful brownstone in Lincoln Park, and shared a life that felt effortlessly synchronized. She was a high-end corporate consultant, brilliant and driven, which meant she traveled a lot, usually 3 days a week. I am a freelance architect, so our schedules worked. When she was home, it was all candlelight dinners at our favorite Italian spot, Gibson's, and long walks along Lake Michigan. We had a joke that we were the boring couple because we never fought. We just worked. But there was one shadow in her life, Sarah. Sarah was Elena's identical twin sister, and according to Elena, she was the personification of drama. Elena told me Sarah lived 2 states away in Indiana and that she absolutely loathed me. The story was that Sarah had a breakdown when we got engaged because she felt I was stealing her other half. Elena said Sarah refused to attend the wedding, refused to see photos of us, and had even threatened to cut Elena off if she ever brought me to visit. It pained Elena deeply. She'd come home from her consulting trips, sometimes looking drained, telling me she'd detoured to see Sarah to try and mend fences, only to be met with more vitriol. I felt for her, I truly did. I even sent Sarah flowers and gifts through Elena for years, trying to bridge the gap, but they were always thrown in the trash, according to my wife. That should have been my first warning, the fact that I had never once heard Sarah's voice or seen a single modern photo of them together. But what came next was so much worse. The first crack in the porcelain appeared on a Tuesday, around 11 p.m. Elena was in New York for a 3-day conference. I was folding laundry, something I usually did to keep busy while the house felt too quiet, when I found a receipt in the pocket of one of her blazers. It wasn't for a bistro in Manhattan. It was for a grocery store called Meijer in a suburb of Indianapolis. It was dated for the previous afternoon, a time when she'd texted me a photo of the New York skyline from her hotel window. If that was the only lie, maybe I could have rationalized it. Maybe she'd had a layover or a client meeting I didn't know about, but the seed was planted. I went to our shared tablet, which she left behind, and checked the Find My app. Her phone location was pinned to a high-rise in Midtown Manhattan, just like she said. But then I remembered something. Elena had complained about her work phone acting up a week prior. I went to her home office and started rummaging through the dress drawers. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for until I felt something cold and metallic tucked behind a stack of old files. It was a second iPhone. Not her work phone, not her personal phone, a third one. My fingers were trembling as I realized it wasn't passcode protected. I opened the messages, and the room seemed to tilt on its axis. There were hundreds of texts from a man named David. The most recent one, sent an hour ago, read, "The kids are finally asleep. Counting down the hours until you're back in my arms, Sarah. This weekend was perfect." I felt a physical sickness rise in my throat. Sarah. She was using her twin sister's name? And who were the kids? My wife and I didn't have children. We'd been trying for 2 years with no success, or so she told me. I scrolled up, my eyes blurring. There were photos. Photos of Elena, my Elena, standing in a kitchen I didn't recognize, holding a toddler. Photos of her and this man, David, at a school play. In every photo, she looked radiant. She looked home. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a one-time thing. This was a parallel existence. I spent the next 4 hours downloading every bit of data I could. I found a hidden Instagram account under the name Sarah Miller Vance. It was a private account, but the bio broke my heart. Wife to David, mama to Leo and Maya, living my best life in Indy. The posts went back 4 years. 4 years of my marriage had been shared with another man, another family, in another state. I knew exactly what I was going to do, but I had to be patient. I couldn't just call her and scream. She'd just delete everything, vanish, or spin a new web of lies. I needed to see it. I needed to stand in the middle of her secret and watch it burn. The next morning, Elena called me from New York. Her voice was sweet, melodic, the same voice that told me she loved me every morning. "Hey, baby," she said. "The conference is running late, so I think I'm going to head straight to Sarah's for the weekend to check on her. She's having a rough patch. I'll be back Monday, okay?" "Of course," I said, my voice sounding like it was coming from a stranger. "Give her my best. Maybe one day she'll let me say hello." "Maybe one day," Elena sighed. "I love you, Mark." "I love you too," I replied. It was the hardest lie I've ever told. I spent the next 3 days acting completely normal. I even texted her about the leaky faucet in our kitchen just to keep the facade up. She had no idea that I had rented a car, something she wouldn't recognize, and was currently sitting in a Starbucks parking lot in Carmel, Indiana, watching the GPS tracker I'd tucked into her suitcase before she left. Friday afternoon, the GPS stopped at a beautiful blue-shuttered colonial house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. It was the kind of house we used to talk about buying one day. I pulled my rental car around the corner and waited. I waited until I saw a silver minivan pull into the driveway. David got out first, a tall, athletic-looking guy with a kind face. Then the side door opened and 2 small children jumped out, screaming, "Mommy, Mommy." And then she stepped out, Elena, or Sarah, or whoever the hell she was in the zip code. She was wearing leggings and a messy bun, looking nothing like the high-powered consultant I knew. She scooped up the little girl and kissed David deeply on the lips. I felt a cold rage settle over me. It wasn't the hot, screaming kind of anger. It was the kind of rage that makes your vision go sharp and your heart beat slow and steady. I opened the car door. The walk up that driveway felt like it took 3 lifetimes. The sound of my shoes on the gravel was the only thing I could hear over the ringing in my ears. David saw me first. He looked confused, then polite, the way you look at a stranger who might be lost. "Can I help you?" he asked, shielding his eyes from the afternoon sun. Elena was still holding the little girl, her back to me. She froze. I saw the physical change in her posture before she even turned around. Her shoulders hiked up to her ears. She knew that voice. She knew that step. "Elena," I said. My voice was calm, conversational. "You forgot your favorite scarf in Chicago. I thought I'd bring it to you." She turned around slowly. The color didn't just leave her face. It was as if her entire soul evaporated. Her skin went a sickly, grayish white. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She gripped the little girl so hard the child started to whimper and pull away. "Who are you?" David asked, his brow furrowing. He looked at me, then at his wife. "Sarah? Who is this?" "Sarah?" I laughed, and the sound was jagged. "Is that who she is today? Because in Chicago, she's Elena. She's been Elena for 7 years, and she's been my wife for 5. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. David's face went through a terrifying transformation, from confusion to realization to absolute horror. He looked at Elena, waiting for her to debunk the crazy stranger. "Sarah?" David whispered, his voice cracking. "What is he talking about?" Elena finally found her voice, but it was a pathetic, thin thing. Mark, please, go to the car. We can talk about this. I can explain." "Explain what?" I stepped closer, pulling a folder from under my arm. I'd printed everything. Our marriage license, photos of our wedding, the deed to our house. "Are you going to explain the consulting trips that were actually just you driving 2 hours south to your other husband? Or maybe you want to explain to David why Sarah's sister doesn't exist, why you used your own twin as a ghost to hide behind?" David took a step back, his hands shaking. You're married? You told me your family was dead. You told me you were an only child from Oregon." I looked at David. I felt a strange, sickening kinship with him. We were both victims of a master architect. "She's not from Oregon," I told him. "She grew up in Naperville. Her parents are very much alive. They think she's in Indianapolis on business right now." Elena dropped to her knees on the grass, the facade finally completely crumbling. She started to sob, not the quiet, elegant sob of a woman in pain, but a frantic, ugly wail. "I loved you both. I couldn't choose. I wanted both lives." "You didn't want both lives, Elena," I said, looking down at her. I felt no pity. "You wanted to be the center of 2 different universes. You wanted to be the career woman with the architect and the suburban mom with the coach. You didn't love us. You loved the thrill of the lie." David was staring at her like she was a monster.
He didn't even try to comfort her. He just picked up his children and walked into the house, slamming the door and locking it. The sound of that deadbolt clicking was the most satisfying thing I've ever heard. Elena scrambled toward me, grabbing at my jeans. "Mark, please, we can fix this. I'll leave him. I'll come home. I'll never go back to Indy. I'll be who you want." I looked at the woman I had worshipped for half a decade. I realized I didn't even know her. The woman I loved was a character she'd played for 40 hours a week. "I don't have a home for you to come back to," I said. "I've already called a locksmith. Your things will be in a storage unit by tomorrow morning. The code will be in your email." I turned around and walked back to my rental car. I didn't look back, even as she screamed my name from the driveway of a house that wasn't hers, in a life that was now over. The aftermath was a whirlwind of legal fire. It turns out, Elena, or Sarah, or whatever name she was using on the various documents she'd forged, had been incredibly careful with her finances, but not careful enough. The divorce was fast. In my state, her fraud made the process remarkably simple, and I took nearly everything. David and I actually spoke a few months later. He was a good man, a high school gym teacher who had been completely blindsided. We didn't become friends, it was too weird for that, but we shared the names of the lawyers we used to ensure she could never pull this on anyone else.
Today, I live in a different city. I sold the brownstone and moved to the mountains. Some people ask me if I'm bitter, if I'll ever trust a woman again. The truth is, I'm not bitter. I'm relieved. The man who lived in that house with Elena was living in a fog. Now, the air is clear. I've learned that the most dangerous lies aren't the ones people tell you. They're the ones you tell yourself to keep the storybook alive. I don't need a storybook anymore. I'm just happy to finally be living the truth.